Hello, everybody, and welcome to an overview of Chapter 8 in the Content Marketing textbook. This is all about events, downloads, and more. These are for the non-traditional, non-major forms of content that exist in the marketing world today. This is supposed to cover kind of everything else that's out in the world. Not everything under the sun is covered here. You're not going to see anything on NFTs, for example, but that is, I do recognize that's an emerging content form, and that will likely be in my next update for this textbook. But for today, we're going to go over some of the major ones that have wide-ranging applicability. And I have cut down the slides to not include everything. So you're going to see that there's not every single lecture slide here. It's available in the courseware. That is okay. I'm just going over the main points that I want to make sure that students have at their disposal and what I think is going to be most useful out in the world. Additionally, nothing that has been excluded. It's not that you have to ignore it per se, but I'm just going over the elements that in the past have been brought to my attention as leading to the most confusion, and that also I believe that you'll be utilizing most if you decide to pursue the content creation as a career path. So let's start with events. First off, my background is largely in events, not just in planning them, but also in the promotion of them and the follow up afterwards and how you use events to create content. And the single biggest benefit of events is that it's an easy to reach audience. There are people there or online that have come together for a shared purpose. They all have the same interest in something, whatever the event is about. And you, as an attendee or as one who's putting it on, person who's hosting it, you can communicate with these people pretty easily. Not saying that you automatically get all the emails or anything. I guess you do if you're a sponsor for an event or if you're hosting it. But even if you're attending it, you can follow up the event attendance with, going online, going onto LinkedIn, going into Facebook, saying, hey, I attended this event and here's what I learned. Now, you may not even be friends with anybody online with people who attended, but it's pretty common that the good old social media algorithms will make sure that some people who attended that event will see your content. And also, it helps your existing friends and connections to see what you've been up to in the professional world and how you have been furthering whatever it is that you're trying to do. This is really good for brand building, good for thought leadership. And from the personal side, it just shows that you're doing something different. So, events are also a great driver of content. The things that come out of events in themselves are good content. And there's stuff that you can talk about before the event, during an event, or after the event. Now, this content will differ based on if you're attending it, if you just registered and went to it, or if you're hosting the event, if you're the one putting it on. We'll talk about the more common one, that's attending an event. This is a great opportunity for you to build whatever the brand is, as I mentioned before, whether it's your personal or your professional brand. It also is content that is timely and relevant, which, as you know by now, is really the name of the game when it comes to a lot of content, especially as it's shared on social media. Finally, you don't have to actually attend the event to utilize it as a marketing tool. If you think about it, the online events, a webinar, you're generally going to get the recording afterwards, or you're at least going to see some key takeaways. You could also go into social media, see if there's any live posting. Same goes for the in-person event. If it's recorded, a lot of times it'll be available afterwards. If it's not recorded and it's a more intimate thing, you can still share, don't lie and say that you were there when you weren't, but you can still mention the importance of the event and its significance, if not just on you, then on the industry that you're a part of. The single best part of attending an event, though, is the in-person element. For me, the last time I attended an in-person event that wasn't my own was the Digital Summit, oddly enough, largely about content marketing. I was one of the speakers, but on the day that I wasn't speaking, I went and made all sorts of great connections, talked to people, even wrote a blog post with some key takeaways. And it was a great way to further the connections that I had already made in person. So I collected, 10 to 15 people's business cards when I was there, digital business cards at least. We had connected on LinkedIn. I wrote the blog post after the event wrapped up and then posted it to LinkedIn and tagged those new connections. They all checked out the article, or at least I think they did. And it was a great way to start a new relationship. Now, that was over a year ago. And today, I'm still connected with them on LinkedIn. And with several of them, they are valuable connections from whom I see good stuff, I see good content, and I learned from. And hopefully, the reverse is also happening from their side. Now, you talk about hosting an event. This is a little bit different, a little bit more going on because you are hosting an event, but also it gives you a ton of opportunity to connect with people in more meaningful ways rather than just networking. First off, assuming that you are capturing registration information, you're getting new data, whether they be prospects or current customers. You also have full control of the information. So, like the digital summit, I remember it was a 2-day event, I believe, and I was speaking at the end of the first day. And I remember thinking the whole first day, like I was not interested in the stuff that they were talking about. The second day was really going to be the interesting stuff. So I went on the second day. I really enjoyed the content and everything that was going on. And I went back and was like, oh God, I'm going to write this blog post about it. I have nothing from day one other than my own session. So I was kind of bummed about that. I didn't want to be, overwhelmingly one-sided in terms of the time, but I ended up doing that anyways, and it still worked fine. At least with hosting an event, you can control what is going on. And for those of you who will be in a small business working in marketing and content creation, and if you have any say in what that event can be and what it is, just think about the shareability, the experience, like how you can use the event for more than just sharing information. Events these days, as we hopefully are winding down this pandemic, which is still going on, contrary to what many believe, the in-person event requires a greater degree of involvement than pre-pandemic events did. What I mean by that is for a person to go to an event in person, yeah, some people just want to get out of the house and go. I get that. But for a large piece of the large part of the audience, they are looking for events that are more of an experience. They're looking for something that they can go and share on social media, show that they are back out in the world. But also, they wanted to make sure that there's something that is actually that they can't get by sitting at home. And I understand the networking piece. I understand getting to see people in person and build relationships. I completely understand that. But that's not how everybody thinks. It's actually, I would argue, the primary way of thinking for many people, especially younger employees, is, what am I going to get out of going to an in-person event that I can't get when I'm sitting at home? It's kind of like the argument for remote work. Why do I have to be in the office when I can do my job remotely? And it's not that these people don't consider the interpersonal relationship element. It's that they're looking for an experience, something that is tangible, that they can remember, something that they can then utilize after the fact. And when you're hosting an event, you are in control of that. You can ensure that that happens, and then you can also make sure that that turns into content after the fact that shows something that was shareable, time sensitive, and has a strong call to action for people to then utilize, and then you can push them through the ADA funnel. Now, also before I move on to the downloads and incentives, I also want you to know that probably the most important slide I'm going to get to here in a moment, it is the content type and the content goals. So we will talk about, we will revisit events here in a moment, kind of like what should the goals be of all of this. That does come up at the end. So don't think, oh, well, you told me about events, but how do I integrate that? That is coming up. So let's talk about downloads and incentives. First, the section of downloads. It's a file. Everybody knows what a download is. There's a couple different things. There's ebooks, white papers, and software to begin with. And we'll get to the incentives momentarily. Now, ebooks and white papers are fundamentally different things. They're different types of content, but you often see them interchanged. But officially, in terms of definitions and how most audiences perceive them, most, not all, this is how they break down. An ebook is something that is designed, it's more marketing speak, and it seems more high level. It might not be the most, you might not learn a ton of stuff from it. There's often not a lot of text. It can be pretty big font, and it shows an area of expertise for a brand. So what Constant Contact did in this example is they go through very basic online marketing principles. I downloaded this and was like, I can't believe I'm reading this. Like, this was so elementary, but it's really good for people starting a business whose background is not marketing, people that are looking for something in terms of an email marketing solution. They go through this, they think I'm getting more than just email marketing by downloading this. They read it, they are the idea of Constant Contact as a brand is developing leadership, thought leadership, and they might eventually become customers. White papers, on the other hand, these are not as designed. They can be a little designed, this is something, but it's minimal in terms of its design, and it's a little bit more complex. There's usually more things going on. You can see from the text here in this screenshot that I grabbed, this is like more intense, elevating email marketing. And if you think about it, say you're starting your business and you're not a marketing person. Like, all right, where do I start? How am I going to get customers? What's the first thing you're going to download? Probably the Constant Contact piece, because it's more well designed. It's a little bit more fun, more visually attractive. But say you're the person who's starting a business, you do know marketing, you've started accumulating emails, and now you need to turn those emails into customers. You might go to the white paper now because you just want the data. You want some very clear things that you can utilize, some clear takeaways and some clear learnings that you can implement immediately. Now, this is the idea. The idea of the white paper is that it carries a certain degree of authority that's a level above the ebook. And the idea is, again, it's supposed to be a little bit more in depth, a little bit more intense. But then you have things like this Soma Metrics example that I have here. This is what they call a white paper, and it is clearly an ebook. So it happened. They don't even spell white paper. They broke it into two words. Things like this are they can go either way. For me, it's less about what they call it and more about what its actual use is. So let's look at ebooks versus white papers. First off, the similarities, they're used interchangeably first. Secondly, they're both lead generating content. A lot of times, white papers and ebooks require you to put in a certain amount of information about yourself to download them. That includes a first name, last name, email address, things like that. And they both drive brand awareness. Now, the one thing I will say about this is I've come around in the last couple of months, actually very recently, to believing that you shouldn't actually gate your content anymore. That I am not a fan of generating leads by requiring people to insert data to get your content. If you're HubSpot, if you're Constant Contact, sure, you can do that. You are amongst the leaders in the world at what you do. 100%, I think that's one thing. But if you're a small business and you come up with some really good stuff, you create this epic ebook, you just need to let people download it and learn about your business and let the authority grow. Because if you require people to put in information, you're going to end up with a fraction of the people that would normally read your content actually put in their information. I've experienced this myself when I created my annual report of the LinkedIn posted digital marketing jobs for entry-level people. I first put it behind a gate. I required people to put in their information, and I got like 30 downloads. Pretty sad. I then ungated it, promoted it again, and I got over 300 views. Now, the fun fact on this is I did get 30 people's emails, and I could start putting them into my MailChimp account and start communicating with them. But I haven't gotten any business out of that. And after I ungated the report and I saw people naturally just going to the report itself and downloading the PDF, suddenly I started getting a couple of people filling out my lead form. They didn't put in their email address. They just naturally reached out to me like, hey, I saw the report, was wondering how I can improve my odds to get a job in content marketing. And so for me, it's lead generating content, whether you put it behind an email sign up or not. And if you put it behind an email sign up, you are decreasing your odds of actually being able to create new business because you're going to have fewer opportunities and fewer viewers. Now, with that aside, let's jump over to the differences between ebooks and white papers. One, an ebook is supposed to be an obvious marketing pieces and more of a lead generation magnet. People are going to look at this somametrics piece and they think it's a little bit more user friendly and visually stunning than this. This is not quite as much, right? More basic iconography. Oh, short buying cycle, mid-length buying cycle, etc. But also, if you think about the big advantage to the white paper over the ebook, it's supposed to be a driver of earned media opportunities. In my old position, we did several white papers, and we didn't call them white papers because we thought it was an ugly tone, ugly word. But when we would send it out to our media list, we would say to a reporter, hey, we have this new white paper that has some original research on the mobility industry. And their ears would perk up and they'd be all about it because they would think of the white paper as something that is more driving authority. If I had told them, hey, we have this new ebook, they're like, okay, I'm not interested in, whatever you have to peddle. So that is the big difference. And if you had to boil it down to one thing, it would be the white paper terminology should be used for this lesser designed content that you are looking to build brand authority with more of an established audience, and you're not just trying to sell something. It's more brand authority, less selling. Ebooks are more about selling. They are about brand awareness. They are about building stuff, building your name as a brand, but you are trying to sell something, plain and simple. You're not creating an ebook for fun. You're not designing a book for fun. You want some sort of ROI. Now let's jump over to the third type of download. That's the software. Now, software, there's a lot of businesses that are built around software like this. Basecamp as a company, they have their own content strategy around it, right? This is the product. But one thing I will say about software is the product itself can be considered content. I'm not going to dig into the freemium stuff right now. It's pretty easy to understand. You download an app. Oh, you need to buy something to eliminate ads by purchasing something. It's pretty straightforward. But I do want to describe software really quick. And the idea here is that things like freemium and elements of software where you can provide a base level of functionality for free and then offer an elevated level of functionality for another fee. That is really the big key point to software here, in that you're covertly promoting a program, you're covertly promoting a business by offering that one hook. You have a hook that you can bring them in. They're like, oh, I really like this user experience. I really like this interface. And then you're like, I want more of this. Or you could give them like a free trial, 14 days. Wow, I really like all this stuff. Oh, your free trial ends tomorrow. You need to pay $39.99 a month in order to keep using it. That type of stuff is really, really useful in content marketing because you can use the use case and the stunning visuals, for example, from software to turn around and create really good content and how you can solve problems. The idea with software here is that it solves problems first and foremost, but also you can covertly promote a program. So if you say, hey, I'm going to create a whole content strategy around how we solve the problem of people want to design social media graphics, but they don't have any design experience and they don't want to go to a designer and pay for them. All right, let's create a series of videos and walkthroughs using our platform to do that. This could be for something like Canva, or they could go in and write some, if you really want to be covert, you don't even have to mention Canva. You just say, hey, rather than, here are your options when you're looking for social media graphics. Here's why it's important. Here are your 3 ways. 1, hire somebody. 2, try to do it yourself, just using Photoshop, the really intense programs. 3, use a website that already exists for you. I don't know, maybe something called, I guess there's this thing called Canva out there, right? You give it they give people some options, and you're using your software to covertly solve a problem that your target market has. That's the idea here. And that's really the crux of what SaaS, software as a service, is. Now, a lot of people that work in SaaS marketing will say different things here. There's certainly different elements to use in that instance, but to be fair, it is something that it's an industry in itself. It's become an industry in itself. SaaS has and it's really an interesting way to promote a product, because when you think about promoting products and you think about selling something, the beauty of using software is that there is no inventory, there is no cost, there is no there's no price. Like, it's pure profit. Really, the cost in building the product is in marketing the product, because it's essentially free to the company for somebody to download it. And that is why SaaS, software as a service, has become so popular in recent years. Now, here's an example of a blog post that Moosend did. I'm sure you could guess who did it if you just look at this table, but this is an example of how you can use software to create something that solves a problem. I won't go into more detail, but you're welcome to check that out in the course. Now, if we look at incentives, incentives are used as a prospecting tool to enhance your digital footprint. This is when somebody provides information in order to get said incentive. There's something in value provided in return. I think we all know what this is. This is like social media giveaways. Here's one example as it's done on Instagram, right? Pretty straightforward. Please check this out. I won't go into more detail. It's pretty obvious what it is. The key thing to remember here is that incentives are just a good content way via social media to get more user information and more brand notoriety on social media. Finally, we have integrating your engaging content. Now, after those things that I just talked about, I did not talk about user-generated content. I think that's pretty straightforward. That section is still available in the slides and in the courseware. You want to be sure that this kind of content is the focal point of your smaller strategy within a larger marketing strategy. So you have 3 phases, and here's the table that I mentioned before. These aren't the only content goals. These are some pretty typical ones. You don't need to memorize all of these per se, but they were really helpful if your boss comes up to you and is like, hey, I'm thinking about writing an ebook, and you're like, all right, we're trying to drive probably new leads to business. How do we make sure that this is fitting the larger marketing strategy, and how do we use this as a smaller strategy to push our larger goals? There's a couple other forms of content that I did not talk about here. You have your survey, your quiz, calculator, other tools as well. But you need to brainstorm your content ideas. You have to recognize your content. What are your strengths? And again, loosely related ideas to the content. This shouldn't be overly promotional. You need to show and if you're going to show the product or the service, you need to make sure that you're showing its benefits and how it improves the lives of those who use it, not saying, hey, my product will do this, this, this. It's more about, here is how your life will improve as a result. It's essentially it's answering the why for the audience, which a lot of companies don't do. And if you think about content marketing and from this side, you really need to focus on answering the why. Like, why should I care? If I'm the audience, why should I care that your product, does all of these things? Well, if you can answer that question, you're going to be a lot more likely to get them as a lead or customer. From there, you need to execute your strategy. You need a timeline, events, SaaS, software, these books. A lot of them they require timelines because there is a built-in time as a frame of reference, because say it's an ebook or a white paper, when is it getting published? If it's an event, when is the event being held? You need to build in that date and have some leeway ahead of time to promote it, right? Build up some excitement and then talk about it afterwards. What is the strategy afterwards? Do we want to be overly promotional? Do we want to be covert about it, like I was talking about earlier? And what exactly are we going to say? And then this all needs to fit within your larger marketing strategy, because chances are all of this is not the strategy. It's all going to be part of something bigger. Now, in the case of software, that might not be the case, right? That might be the strategy. But think about software and you have updates that are happening, a new like level of account or something like that. There's stuff that can go within the software, because these timelines are going to be really critical, not just for successful execution, but for growth. Like, you don't just want to, oh, like we did it, yay. But like, how are you going to actually meet your goals? Without a timeline, you're going to miss some really key opportunities that take advantage of this inherent timeliness and the timeliness and relevance that appears when you have these different types of content. And that just about wraps it up. This is chapter 8 in my content marketing textbook, and one of my favorite chapters. Did not go over absolutely everything, but I think I covered the major points. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out as always. And if you're looking for more details and more examples of some of those other forms, such as calculators, please feel free to let me know. I am happy to discuss in more detail. Thank you.